What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Jofalltrades. What have we been up to? We've got a ton of stuff going on, lots of content coming to you guys. Today we're looking at an old Dodge truck that had an ignition switch and cylinder replaced, and we ended up having a new key there but different keys on the lock cylinders and the doors. So I wanted to show you guys how to go about removing those lock cylinders from the door handle and actually repinning the cylinder so that we can have the same key throughout the truck like it should be. It's a bit of a pain dealing with a couple keys, so I thought I'd go over this just to show you guys that it can be done without a locksmith or without taking it to the dealership. We like to try and like to show you that you can do things yourself with a little bit of patience. So let's take a look. Okay guys, here's the handle we have here out of a 96 to 2001 Dodge Ram. As far as the lock cylinder goes, most Dodges I'm guessing will have a very similar setup here. A little tricky getting it out. Couple things to note: these clips here, this one for the lock cylinder rod and a second one for the handle rod. Be very careful as these get older and they get brittle. You don't want to end up snapping one of these off and having to worry about replacing that. Couple 8mm or 5/16 nuts on these two studs, and then another 8mm bolt here holding a metal clip that's supposed to provide a little bit of security for the handle, a little bit of stability, but it doesn't do very much. So that's about it. Once you're moved from the door, this is what you're dealing with here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this lock cylinder. I don't know if you can see here, a couple straightforward tools to get this job done. Just a long flat bladed narrow screwdriver. A pick, if you have, works well too. We've got a clip in here, kind of like a horseshoe clip, that holds the cylinder into the body of the handle. You can see this corner is sticking up. We're just going to gently pry on this corner, and you can see the clip start to come out of the body, and there you have it. So just pay attention to the orientation. You've got a short side and a long side. It's pretty straightforward. It really only fits one way in the handle. So now that our clip is out, again, this is a fairly old truck. This cylinder is probably in here pretty good, but we're going to take our screwdriver. We're just going to start to put a bit of pressure on the cylinder and just sort of work it out of the handle slowly. It may be a little jammed up depending on how much dirt has got in there, but you want to get underneath the plastic, push down, and out pops your cylinder. So there we go. Couple extra things on the handle. We're gonna hit this spring with some PB Blaster. We're gonna lubricate that because that's kind of the function of the hinge mechanism. And since we have it out and basically disassembled, I'm gonna trim black this so that it looks a little better. It's kind of grayed out, it's faded. So we're gonna set the handle aside and we're gonna start focusing here on our cylinder replacement. So you can see the two cylinders side by side. This is the standard product. That's the manufacturer of the aftermarket stuff. It's identical. The one thing you do have to transfer over from cylinder to cylinder, from old to new, is this clip for the cylinder arm. So it's on a bit of a bracket here. It's held on by a C-clip. And if you take a look at the movement of this, it has a stop, so it only turns so far, and then a stop on the other side. So just pay attention to the orientation of how this arm is sitting on the cylinder and install it on the new one the same way. We're just gonna gently pry on this C-clip. And again, it could be a little gummed up, but I can see it starting to move, and these usually fly off and disappear into thin air. So we're gonna kind of brace it with our fingers as we're prying it out. Just sort of work back and forth with the screwdriver, and you see it just came off straightforward like that. Set that down, and off comes our arm. And again, we're paying attention to the orientation, and we're gonna be setting the arm on exactly the same way as it came off so that it hits the stop at the same angle. So I'm going to set that aside the way I want it to go on the new cylinder. So as I mentioned earlier, had to put a new ignition in the truck, got a new set of ignition keys, And of course our door keys, our door lock cylinders don't match the new ignition key. So we want to key these to be the same and have one key for the truck like we used to before the ignition had to be replaced. So you can see in the body of the cylinder that we have out here that when the key's out of the cylinder, these little tabs, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that are facing up. And if I take the key that came with the new cylinders and I put the key in, you'll see and watch the tabs all go down. They're coded to the key, they're all flat. There's nothing raised here, so that accepts the key that it's coded to. I take my ignition key that I want to rekey to match to, put this key in and it fits, but you may notice that a couple tabs, the second one here, the 6th one in the back, they're raised, they're not flat. So I put this key in and nothing turns. I put the coded key in and everything spins like it should. Okay, so now we're going to start disassembling the new lock cylinder, and basically what we're going to be doing is sorting out the tabs to match the ignition key instead of the key that it came with. Okay guys, a couple things we got to disassemble here. There's this spring on the back and it fits a certain way. You can see it sitting in the body of the cylinder. One side is inset and the other side is closer to the edge. So we're going to remove that spring. We're going to pay attention to how it's sitting on here. I'm just prying up, holding it and popping it off, and I'm going to set that aside. And just remember that the spring fits into the two angled pieces there. The other thing you got to do before you start taking this apart is pop this faceplate off. I don't know if you can see it on camera here. The plate has dimples around the edges, 4 or 5 of them, and basically it just holds this in a channel. So all you got to do is get your flat blade underneath, put a little bit of pressure on this plate, and you can see as you rotate your screwdriver, it starts to pop up. Again, hold it so it doesn't go flying across the room. Now we've got our faceplate off, so that's good. Next step, we're going to take our key, insert it into the lock. We're going to turn it sideways. I'll show you that again. Oops. So there's the lock. We're going to take our key, put it in. All the tabs are down flat. We're going to spin the key sideways. We're going to pull the lock cylinder out of the body. We're going to set that aside. You can see with our lock cylinder here, a set of tabs on this side, and you have a set of tabs on the bottom as well. Next step, as we pull the key out, we're going to be taking these tabs out of these slots, and we're going to be figuring out which tabs match our new ignition key. So we got our ignition key in the cylinder. You can see all the tabs, top and bottom, are perfectly flat. And when you take the key we're trying to code to and you put it into the cylinder, now you can really see this. You see we've got a couple tabs sticking up here. We've got one there, the second one. We've got one on the bottom sticking up. So these tabs are not in the right order to accept this key, and that's what we're going to change as we take this apart. So we got our cylinder, so we're going to push on the bottom. Start from the top down here. You can see the tab coming out. Pull that tab out, and there we go. There's a spring in each hole as well. So we're going to just take our pick and we're going to pop that spring out, and we're going to keep that beside the tab. So there we go. So for each hole, you basically have a tab and a spring. And careful, because as you can see, they fly all over the place. So we're going to keep them like that. Each of these tabs is going to have a number on them. And I don't know if you can see this, but this one is clearly stamped with a number 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the body. The order of this obviously is incorrect for the key, so it doesn't matter what comes out. We're going to go through the body, pull these tabs and springs out, and then we're going to start fitting them back together. I don't have the code for this key, so basically trial and error until we get the right tab in the right slot. So again guys, trial and error. I've got my tabs laid out and I've written down what numbers they are, and I've got 2 out of the 7 digits of the ignition key code figured out. So trial and error. We're carefully pulling the key kind of out and in, and we're paying attention to what tab is coming out of here. So I just pulled out a number 4. So I know that that one's not a number 4. So I'm gonna take a 3, we're gonna try a 3. So I popped a 3 in, and as you can see, it's still sticking out the bottom, so it's not a 3. So I'm gonna pull this out, remove our 3 that we just put in. So it's either a 1 or a 2. Basically process of elimination. I pulled these tabs out of the old cylinder too, guys, just to have extras. Okay, so I put a 2 in, and it looks really close, but it is kind of raised right there. So I'm guessing we're gonna leave it as a 2 because it looks really close. Oh, the back one's not a 3. That was a 3, and the spring came with it. So we're just gonna set the spring back in here. Let's see if it's a 2. No, it doesn't look like a 2, although it's pretty close. Gotta remember to hold this thing with these tabs sideways so that they don't fall out as you're dealing with figuring out your key. So, how'd it go? By trial and error, we figured out what each pin number was, and they're only numbered 1, 2, 3, or 4, so it's really not that bad of a process if you don't have the key code. In this case, we're working on an older vehicle. We're trying to keep it do it yourself, not have to go to the shop. So all the pins are in according to our new code. I took a Dremel with a little bit of a sanding wheel on it, and I just buzzed down the I buzzed down the edges, and there really were none, but as you can see, this spins real free. Got a little bit of white lithium grease in there as well, but yeah, it spins real free. So now we're going to start reassembling our lock cylinder. Cylinder goes in, key comes out, right? Spring goes on, lined up with these 2 little notches here. So you hook the far end in, just like that. Take our little screwdriver, hook the other end in there, just like that. Give it a wiggle so that it seats on the body. So now our spring is holding things in goes the key. Spring loaded, let the working the way it's supposed to. The spring is seated properly. Last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our cap, just gonna snap it back on, just like so. Again, working very well. Proper key. Keys that came with the cylinder will not do anything, so we've got it right here. So next thing, we want to get our lock rod arm back on with our C-clip. Now this was oriented a certain way, so we're going to make sure we're putting that back on the same way that it came off. So we've got our lock mechanism oriented the proper way here, and we need to get this clip back in. Okay, so we pressed in our little C-clip retainer there, just testing the operation of our actuator. Last thing, we, as mentioned, we took our door handle. I gave it a shot of trim black, bit of white lithium grease on the spring, looks great, looks brand new. We are now going to set our cylinder back into the door handle. We're gonna make sure that the cylinder pushes all the way in. You hear a little snap like that. And again, we're gonna grab our retaining clip and we're gonna push that down, and now that's held in place. And this particular setup, there you are with the brand new one, is oriented for the passenger side. You're going to have a different position on the driver's side. Obviously the clip's going to face the other way, both clips here. But yeah, there's basically a rekeyed cylinder with a restored handle. And yeah, last thing is to throw it back in the truck and give it a final test. And of course, we're going to duplicate the process on the other side to get that handle refurbished and get that lock rekeyed. So again, trial and error with the code. We got lucky here. We had the new cylinders from standard. We had the old cylinders from the truck. So we had an assortment of pins, various numbers, and we got lucky. Now, if you don't have the right numbered pin, obviously this isn't going to go together. but you can get pin kits for your vehicle if you need to rekey a lock. I'll put a link to one of the suppliers in the description below. I'll also give you guys a link to the trim black paint that I really like to use on all my trim that I restore, SEM trim black. Yeah, so now we're getting ready to throw this back into the truck here. All right guys, as you can see here, we got our refurbished handle back in the truck. Again, keyed alike with the new cylinder. Everything works very smoothly, almost like new. Really nice to have this this truck all one key again after replacing the ignition cylinder and not knowing quite what to do with the old lock cylinders. All right guys, there you have it. Breathing some new life into this old Dodge here. I'm hoping that a video like this would help some of you that need to purchase new cylinders and want to have a matching ignition key for your vehicle. Again, the same process goes for many different types of vehicles. So if you'd like to see more automotive content coming up on Jofalltrades, please subscribe, hit the like button, and we'll catch you in the next one.